In the heart of a vast, green land lay the kingdom of Arindi, a realm blessed with riches and harmony. From the shimmering rivers to the endless fields where crops grew tall, Arindi was a land of abundance. People here worked hard but lived in peace, trusting their king, Aduke, who ruled from a palace as grand as the sunlit hills. Beneath the shade of tall, ancient trees, villagers sang songs of praise for their homeland, thankful for the protection and wisdom of their leaders. At the heart of this kingdom stood King Aduke, a figure admired by many. Tall and strong, with eyes that sparkled like the rivers of Arindi, Aduke seemed the image of a perfect ruler. By his side was his queen, Zara, a woman of grace and kindness, beloved by all. The people looked to Queen Zara as a motherly figure, for she cared deeply about her people's happiness and well-being. Together, the king and queen were seen as the guardians of peace in Arindi, an ideal pair to bring forth a royal heir and secure the future of their people. Yet, beneath the surface of this perfect picture, something troubled King Aduke's heart. Despite all he had, a prosperous kingdom, a beautiful queen, and the love of his people, he felt an unshakable restlessness. Unbeknownst to Queen Zara and the kingdom, Aduke's heart wandered, seeking comfort and thrill outside the royal bedchamber. It was a dangerous habit, hidden from view, for if his secret life were revealed, it could shatter the harmony of the land. So, with his quiet discontent buried within, King Aduke continued his duties by day, ruling with a smile and grace. But by night, he drifted into a shadowed world, a hidden life that only he knew of. Little did he realize that his secrets, though carefully hidden, would soon lead him down a path of no return, setting the kingdom of Arindi on the edge of an unforeseen disaster. As the kingdom of Arindi thrived, so too did the hidden desires of its ruler, King Aduke. Though the people celebrated him as a wise and fair leader, the king harbored a deep sense of discontent. With a restlessness he could not tame, Aduke turned away from his faithful queen and found solace in secret affairs with village women. The thrill of these hidden encounters filled a void he could not name, giving him a fleeting satisfaction that vanished as quickly as it came. This secret tryst became his escape, a temporary comfort that both excited and troubled him. Each encounter, however, pulled him further from the values he was meant to uphold as king. Aduke knew the dangers of his actions but brushed aside any guilt, convincing himself that his hidden life would never touch the light of day. His infidelities remained a closely guarded secret, even from the palace servants who attended him daily. To his people, he was still the respected King Aduke, the pillar of Arindi. Yet with each passing day, his hidden actions chipped away at the foundation of his rule, drawing him ever closer to a fate he would not be able to escape. While Aduke chased secret desires, his queen, Zara, remained devoted to him and the kingdom. Queen Zara was admired for her gentle spirit, her wisdom, and her genuine care for the people of Arindi. Known for her frequent visits to the villages, she made sure that no home went without food or shelter. The villagers saw her as a beacon of hope and love, a queen who embodied kindness and humility. Zara's warmth was felt by everyone around her, but despite the love she showered on others, she harbored a growing sorrow. For years, Queen Zara had longed for a child, an heir who would continue the royal legacy and bring joy to their lives. She hoped that with time, she and Aduke would be blessed with a son or daughter to bring new life to the palace. Yet, night after night, she found herself alone, waiting for a husband who rarely came. Though she sensed something amiss, Zara's heart remained loyal. She clung to the hope that Aduke's love for her would eventually be rekindled, that one day he would return to her side with the same passion they once shared. One evening, While wandering the outskirts of the kingdom in search of his usual pleasures, Aduke met a woman unlike any he had ever seen. Her name was Lani, a stranger who seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. Draped in a flowing, dark gown and with eyes that shimmered like the moonlight on the river, Lani's beauty was bewitching. Aduke was immediately drawn to her, captivated by her aura and the mysterious allure that surrounded her. Lani spoke little, but her gaze alone held a power that made him feel vulnerable and exposed. Without a second thought, Aduke gave in to his desires, unaware of the danger lurking behind her enchanting smile. Their time together was intense yet strange, leaving Aduke both satisfied and unsettled. When he awoke alone the following morning, he thought it was just another one of his secret encounters. But as he began to rise, he was struck by a chilling realization: something within him had changed. A sudden fear seized him, as he sensed that Lani's touch had taken something he could never reclaim. To his horror, Aduke discovered he had lost his manhood. In a single night, his strength and pride had been stripped from him, leaving only shame and confusion. The fear of what he had lost gripped him, making it hard to breathe as he stumbled through the morning in disbelief. Yet, even as the curse weighed heavily on him, Aduke remained silent, too humiliated to speak of his affliction to anyone. He dreaded the shame it would bring and refused to imagine how his people, or worse, Queen Zora, would react if they knew. In the days that followed, Aduke withdrew from his duties, consumed by his torment. His once commanding presence became a shadow of what it was, and those around him began to notice his strange behavior. But to all who questioned his health, Aduke offered only vague explanations, too fearful to reveal the truth of his encounter with Lani. Little did he know, he was not the only one who had fallen victim to the mysterious woman's curse, and soon his silent suffering would echo throughout the kingdom. Meanwhile, in the village below the palace, several men were grappling with the same mysterious affliction. Unbeknownst to one another, they too had encountered the same alluring woman and had paid the same price. They awoke, like Aduke, to find their manhood stripped away, leaving them in a state of confusion and disgrace. Fearful of what their wives and neighbors would think, they kept their suffering hidden, each man struggling in silence with his shame. The women in the village noticed the strange change in their husbands, whispering among themselves about the distance that had suddenly grown between them. As days turned into weeks, the silence weighed heavily on the afflicted men, isolating them even from those they loved. The shame of their condition grew like a shadow over their lives, casting doubt and fear into their hearts. Though they longed to understand what had happened to them, none dared to speak of it, for they could not bear the thought of disgrace. Each man held his secret close, unaware that his suffering was shared by many others in his village. In the palace, Queen Zora's worry deepened with each passing day. She could no longer ignore the distance that had crept between her and Aduke, a silence that filled the chambers once alive with laughter and love. The nights grew colder, and her hopes for an heir faded as Aduke withdrew further into himself. His once warm touch was now absent, and Zora's heart grew heavy with unanswered questions. Though she yearned to confront him, she feared pushing him away even more and kept her worry hidden. Yet, her concern did not go unnoticed. The palace servants whispered about the king's peculiar behavior, and Zora could not escape the growing tension that loomed over her once happy home. Troubled by dreams and unable to sleep, she began to seek the wisdom of the elders, believing they might offer some insight. With each prayer and every candle she lit, Zora silently hoped that whatever troubled her husband would soon be lifted, restoring the love and warmth they once shared. While Zora sought answers, the villagers struggled under the weight of their silent suffering. As the strange affliction persisted, rumors began to spread, and the men grew more fearful of the whispers that filled the village. Many of them felt their pride crumble under the burden of their condition, and still, none dared to speak of it openly. The affected men avoided each other's gazes, fearing that someone might recognize the shared misery they bore. This silence, however, began to erode the bonds that held the village together. Families grew distant, and the once bustling markets seemed quieter than before. The shame each man carried turned them into strangers within their own homes, isolating them from the lives they once cherished. The air in the village grew heavy with tension, yet still, no one dared to speak of the affliction, hoping it might pass like a shadow in the night. Inside the palace, King Aduke's struggle mirrored that of his people. His shame consumed him, haunting his every thought as he tried to maintain the appearance of a strong ruler. Yet the curse weighed heavily on his soul, stripping him of the confidence that once defined him. In moments of solitude, he would reflect on the path that had led him here, grappling with the shame of his infidelity and the hopelessness that now gripped him. He knew that he was bound to a silence as suffocating as it was isolating. Desperation took root in Aduke's heart, and his demeanor grew darker with each passing day. His once commanding presence became frail, his eyes avoiding those who sought his guidance. The people, once in awe of their king's strength, began to whisper about his failing health, sensing that something sinister had taken hold of their beloved ruler. But Aduke, unwilling to face his mistakes, clung to his silence, unaware that his people were also suffering in their own silence. One moonlit evening, as the village lay under the quiet blanket of night, Lani returned, her presence felt in the shiver of the trees and the chill in the air. She moved through the village as if a shadow, casting a spell over those she encountered. Those who recognized her felt an instinctual dread, yet none could resist her allure. Though she offered little explanation, her influence grew as she wove her way through the lives of the men she had cursed. Her dark magic thrived on the silent shame she had sown into the village. Lani soon found her way back to the palace, where she approached Aduke with a knowing smile, rekindling the shame and fear he thought he had hidden. With her seductive charm, she gained even greater power over him, toying with his weakness as though it were a game. For Aduke, each encounter with Lani deepened his sense of helplessness, leaving him more ensnared by her spell. As the kingdom fell further into shadow, the people's silent suffering only strengthened her power. Queen Zora, growing more desperate for answers, sought the guidance of the kingdom's elders, hoping their wisdom could unveil the root of her husband's torment. She shared her worries, explaining the changes she had noticed in Aduke's behavior, and sought any advice that could help restore the peace in their lives. The elders listened with solemn expressions, sensing that a powerful curse had settled over the kingdom, though they were uncertain of its origin. Their advice to Zora was cautious yet hopeful, urging her to stay strong and to continue seeking the truth with patience and grace. They shared ancient stories of spirits and curses, warning her that sometimes unseen forces influence the lives of even the most powerful. Zora took their words to heart, feeling a renewed determination to uncover the cause of Aduke's despair. She pledged to find a way to lift the darkness that had taken hold of their lives, even if it meant facing unimaginable truths. The silent suffering of the village men began to feel unbearable, pressing on their spirits like a heavy stone. One by one, a few of the afflicted men started to break their silence, confiding in each other about their mysterious loss of manhood after encounters with the same woman. In hushed conversations, they shared their shame, each man realizing he was not alone in his curse. Their shared stories began to paint a clearer picture of Lani's nature and intentions, yet their hearts trembled with fear of her dark power. For the first time, these men found solace in their mutual understanding, a fragile bond formed through their collective shame and sorrow. Though the pain of their condition still weighed heavily on them, they felt a spark of hope ignited within, a new courage to face what had happened. They vowed to find a way to confront the source of their suffering and break the curse that had so quietly stolen their pride and happiness. Desperate for answers, the afflicted villagers approached the eldest members of the community, hoping they might shed light on the dark presence that had cursed them. The elders listened gravely, recognizing a familiar story woven into the men's confessions. They spoke of ancient legends that warned of spirits who punished unfaithful men, binding them to a life of shame. They cautioned that these spirits fed on dishonesty and betrayal, drawing power from those who strayed from their vows. The elders warned that such spirits could not be easily defeated, for they thrived on the weakness and secrecy of their victims. However, they offered a glimmer of hope, advising the men to seek justice by uniting and sharing their shame openly. Only through honesty and a collective confrontation could they hope to free themselves from Lani's grip. Inspired by the elders' words, the men prepared to confront their fears, knowing that only through truth could they reclaim their lost pride. Though the villagers had begun to uncover the nature of their curse, King Aduke remained isolated, unwilling to face the truth of his own role in the kingdom's suffering. When a few brave villagers approached the palace to seek his help, Aduke dismissed their concerns with a wave of his hand, fearing that their story would expose his own indiscretions. He told them it was simply a passing misfortune and assured them it would soon fade. But his words did little to ease their despair. The villagers left the palace with a growing resentment, feeling betrayed by the king's refusal to acknowledge their suffering. They had hoped for a leader who would stand beside them in their time of need, yet Aduke's silence deepened their wounds. Their respect for him began to wither, replaced by the bitterness of a betrayal they could not ignore. With a new resolve, they decided to confront Lani themselves, believing their king had abandoned them. The afflicted men gathered under the cover of darkness, united by their shared suffering and driven by a determination to free themselves from Lani's curse. In whispered voices, they devised a plan to confront her, armed with the wisdom of the elders and the courage drawn from each other's strength. They vowed to face their shame together, to stand as one against the woman who had robbed them of their dignity. The weight of their silence lifted as they prepared to reclaim their lives. For the first time since their encounters with Lani, the men felt a spark of hope. They were no longer helpless victims, they were a united force, prepared to stand against the darkness that had invaded their lives. With each step they took toward Lani's lair, they felt their spirits grow stronger, fueled by the knowledge that they were fighting not only for themselves but for their families, their wives, and their kingdom. As the villagers rallied to confront her, Lani's influence over King Aduke deepened. Her power over him grew with each encounter, as she whispered into his ear, sowing seeds of doubt and despair. Lani's manipulations drove a wedge between the king and his people, clouding his judgment and weakening his hold on the throne. Her dark magic twisted his mind, feeding on his fears and insecurities, until he became a shadow of the man he once was. Under Lani's influence, Aduke began making decisions that left his advisors puzzled and his people concerned. The kingdom, once flourishing, began to show signs of neglect, as crops withered and the people's spirits dimmed. Lani's power reached beyond the palace walls, casting a shadow over Arindi itself. The people sensed a darkness creeping into their lives, yet few could pinpoint its source. As her influence grew, so too did the villagers' determination to free themselves and their kingdom from her spell. Queen Zora could no longer ignore the changes overtaking her husband and her kingdom. The man she loved had become a stranger, his warmth replaced by a chilling detachment that left her feeling abandoned. The once thriving kingdom she had cherished seemed to wither before her eyes, and her heart ached for the suffering of her people. Though her spirit remained unbroken, Zora felt the weight of despair settle over her, as she struggled to understand the darkness that had invaded their lives. Determined to find the truth, Zora continued seeking guidance, refusing to let her husband's silence and distance deter her. She prayed for strength, hoping that the wisdom of the ancestors would guide her path. Her love for Aduke remained, but she could feel it slipping away, eroded by the secrets he kept from her. With every unanswered question, her resolve grew, for she knew that her people's lives depended on her strength. Guided by the wisdom of the elders, the afflicted villagers set out on a journey to the sacred forest, where an old shaman was said to possess the knowledge of curses and spirits. The shaman's reputation had spread far beyond Arindi, and the villagers hoped he could offer a solution to their suffering. As they ventured deeper into the forest, they felt the weight of their shame lessen, replaced by a sense of purpose they had not felt since the curse took hold. When they reached the shaman's hut, they explained their plight, describing the mysterious woman who had stolen their strength and left them in shame. The shaman listened intently, his face grave as he recognized the spirit that had cursed them. He spoke of ancient powers and dark spirits who preyed on weakness, warning that the woman they had encountered was not of this world. The villagers' fears were confirmed, yet the shaman offered them hope, advising them to confront Lani with unity and courage. The shaman revealed that Lani was a spirit sent to punish unfaithful men, drawn to their weaknesses like a moth to a flame. She thrived on betrayal and dishonesty, gaining strength from the secrets they kept hidden from their loved ones. However, the shaman explained that Lani's power was not invincible. Her magic could be broken if the men united and faced her without shame, showing that they had learned the value of honesty and loyalty. The shaman's words stirred something deep within the villagers, igniting a spark of redemption. They understood that they could only free themselves by confronting their own actions, accepting responsibility for the choices that had led them down this path. They left the forest with renewed determination, ready to confront Lani and reclaim their lives. Together, they vowed to restore the trust they had lost and heal the wounds that had divided their families. The villagers returned to Arindi, gathering their courage and preparing to confront Lani. The shaman's words echoed in their minds, reminding them that only through unity and honesty could they hope to break her curse. They shared their plans with their families, confessing their mistakes and seeking forgiveness. Though it was difficult, the men felt a weight lifted from their shoulders as their wives listened, offering compassion and understanding instead of judgment. Their families stood by them, joining in the fight against Lani's dark power. With their loved ones beside them, the villagers felt their strength grow, their courage reinforced by the bonds of family and friendship. Together, they prepared to confront Lani, knowing that this battle was not only for themselves but for the kingdom of Arindi as a whole. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of the kingdom. The villagers confronted Lani in a clearing just outside the village. As they approached, her once alluring beauty twisted into something sinister, her eyes gleaming with malice. But the men stood firm, united in their resolve. They had come together not as victims, but as a community determined to reclaim their lives. Lani laughed, mocking their courage, yet the strength in their hearts remained unshaken. With each step they took toward her, Lani's power began to waver. She could feel their resolve weakening her hold, for she thrived on their shame and secrecy, and they had nothing left to hide. The villagers closed in, their voices raised in unity as they demanded justice. In that moment, Lani's magic shattered, her dark influence vanishing like smoke. The curse lifted, restoring the strength that had been stolen from them, and the villagers felt a newfound freedom wash over them. With her power broken, Lani was forced to confess her deeds. She revealed her true nature as a spirit sent to punish those who betrayed their vows, a force that fed on dishonesty and broken promises. The villagers listened with a mixture of horror and relief, understanding that they had been chosen not by chance, but by their own actions. Lani's words served as a harsh reminder of the consequences of betrayal, and the men felt a deep sense of regret for the pain they had caused. Lani's confession also revealed Aduke's role in their suffering, for he, too, had fallen under her spell. The villagers felt a surge of anger, realizing that their king had shared in their fate yet kept his silence, allowing them to suffer alone. They vowed to seek justice, for Lani had stolen more than their strength. She had taken the trust and unity that held their community together. Her confession marked the beginning of her downfall, as the villagers prepared to bring her to justice. The villagers, now free from Lani's curse, demanded answers from King Aduke. They confronted him in the palace, their voices filled with anger and disappointment. Aduke could no longer hide the truth, and as the villagers pressed him for answers, he was forced to confess his own betrayal. The people listened in shock and disbelief, for they had placed their trust in him, only to discover that he had shared in their suffering yet offered them no help. The king's confession shattered the last remnants of their respect for him, and they demanded that he step down from the throne. Aduke, stripped of his pride and power, was left to face the consequences of his actions. The villagers had found their strength and unity once more, and they knew that they deserved a leader who would honor their trust. Aduke's reign had come to an end, and the kingdom of Arindi prepared to begin anew. Lani was brought before the village elders, who held a council to decide her fate. Though she had lost her power, the people demanded justice for the pain and suffering she had caused. The elders listened to her confession, weighing her actions carefully. They understood that she was a spirit of punishment, but they could not ignore the damage she had wrought upon the community. After much deliberation, the elders decided to banish her from Arindi, forbidding her from ever returning. Lani's departure marked the end of her reign of terror, and the people felt a sense of relief as the darkness lifted from their lives. The villagers had faced their own mistakes, learned the importance of honesty and unity, and emerged stronger than before. Lani's judgment served as a reminder that the bonds of trust were sacred, and the people vowed to uphold them, knowing that they were the true strength of their community. With Lani gone and Aduke no longer their king, the people of Arindi chose a new leader, one who valued honesty, loyalty, and unity. The kingdom began to heal, the scars of betrayal fading as the villagers rebuilt their lives and their trust in one another. Queen Zora, though saddened by her husband's fall, found solace in the resilience of her people, knowing that they had emerged stronger from the trials they had faced. As the village flourished once more, the people remembered the lesson they had learned, that unity and honesty were the foundation of a strong community. The tale of Lani and Aduke's downfall became a story passed down through generations, a reminder of the consequences of betrayal and the power of truth. The kingdom of Arindi had been tested, but it had endured, stronger and wiser than before. And so, they looked toward the future with hope, knowing that together, they could overcome any challenge that lay ahead. Please like and subscribe to this channel for more enchanting stories like this.